StrategEast, US think tank, and today we're happy to present our Westernization Report 2019. As you know from the materials we've sent you, we invited you. And yeah, so we're going to have a presentation. Our president, Mr. Motkin, will present the report that describes the political and economic events that occurred in Eurasian and Baltic states during 2018 and how they affected actually the level of Westernization in those countries, these events. And then we're going to have a kind of Q&A session, and we will be happy to answer all your questions and to actually start the discussion about the countries of this region. So thank you, and let's start.
Thank you. My name is Anatoly Motkin. I'm president and founder of StrategEast. And thank you for coming. And our issue today is our Westernization Report 2019, which is actually the follow-up study to Westernization Index of 2018. So I'll start from the index just to show you what the product is. So the idea of first, we seek, as strategists, we seek to help the nations of Eurasian and Baltic countries to better address the shared challenges they face in the process of rebuilding their states and institutions since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Second, we seek to draw attention to an important but geopolitically fragile region in a way that helps the international community better support its development. The StrategEast Westernization Index 2019 is the first of its kind in three ways. First, it is the only report to analyze the 14 countries of the post-Soviet non-Russian region, we call it PSNR, as a whole. Identifying the PSNR as a single region means acknowledging that for all these countries, the post-Soviet transition has not been easy. It also means asking Western powers to tailor their foreign policy approaches with a more complete understanding of the region's unique and shared challenges. Second, it measures each country's wholesale integration into the Western world across many sectors. Other research products tend to measure one specific issue, such as economic inequality or press freedom. We're interested in looking at the whole picture to see how these countries have handled the transition away from the close, centrally controlled institutions of the Soviet era and toward the democratic, market-oriented and accountable institutions of today's world. And third, it is prepared for the West by experts from the region. The analysis and methodology are undertaken by the local experts in each country. Unlike the realms of research into the region prepared by foreign experts, this is a true product of the region it studies. Why this research does not include Russia, which is important because we understand that post-Soviet means 15 republics and not only 14. While academic and research interest in Russia has always been significant, such interest in other former Soviet states has been limited. The StrategEast Index, by focusing on all post-Soviet countries except Russia, is intended to help generate a more balanced and multifaceted attention to the region. By excluding Russia, we do not assume that Russia is more or less westernized than other post-Soviet states and societies. Rather than objectives is to draw attention to all other former Soviet countries and to the development they have undergone since the collapse of the USSR. Now, index methodology, which is important. How do we measure and what do we measure? The StrategEast Westernization Index 2018 is based on a series of elements and benchmarks that help to assess the adoption of the implementation of the Western model by looking at 5 key areas. First, political Westernization. Second, economic Westernization. Legal Westernization, language and cultural Westernization, and Westernization of lifestyle. Each area, which has multiple sub-areas, is weighted differently within the index to capture the relative importance of each sector to the overall Western transition. The weight of each of the first 3 areas is 25, which is clear because political, economic, and legal are more important, and language and Westernization are 25% altogether, which says language is and cultural Westernization 15%, and Westernization of lifestyle is 10%. The maximum possible score is 100%, which is clear, which represents full Westernization. Now, here you have the score and the index of all countries. So the index shows that 4 groups of countries can be distinguished. First one is genuine pro-Westernized, Westerners, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, which are Baltic states. They're members of European Union, they're members of NATO. Second one is pro-Western facade, Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. Third one is balancing pragmatics, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. And fourth states, Turkmenistan and Tajikistan. So now you can see that Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia is 93%, which is almost, we can say, complete Westernization. Lithuania and Latvia. Georgia, as we know, thanks to the reforms that Georgia had undergone during the 2000s, is 62 on fourth place. Moldova, Ukraine, Armenia, Kazakhstan. For us, this index actually was published a year ago, and for the first time it was published during the German Marshall Fund Brussels Forum a year ago in March. And it was like 2 months, 1.5 months before the Velvet Revolution in Armenia. And some people were surprised that Armenia, despite all the funds that were spent by Kazakhstan to attract the Western advisors and companies to the country, Armenia, which is a relatively poor country, is above Kazakhstan. But after 1.5, 2 months, we've seen the Velvet Revolution in Armenia. And the conclusion was that the civil society in Armenia is much more mature rather than in Kazakhstan, and maybe that is the result that we see here. And then Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Belarus, Uzbekistan, and again Tajikistan, Turkmenistan on the last place as the countries which are, as we call them, the fourth states. Now, common past, different present. The business climate in the region is extremely diverse. From Estonia, one of the top 6 countries in the world in the Index of Economic Freedom, to the Turkmenistan ranking 174th out of 178 countries in the same rating. In terms of business climate, the European Union member states trio, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, is joined by Georgia, which even outscored Latvia and Lithuania in the Doing Business Index. 69% of Ukraine citizens have never crossed the country's borders. Although Belarus is among the top 7 countries with the largest number of Schengen visas issued, 59% of Belarusians have not left their country at all over the past 3 years. At the same time, 3.5 million visits abroad originated in Estonia. Considering the country has a population of 1.5, I think 1.2 million people, this is more than 1 trip abroad per year per person. At the present moment, the number of internet users in PSNR, post-Soviet and Russia region, countries varies drastically, from 15% in Turkmenistan and 18.7% in Tajikistan to more than 90% in Estonia. Now, StrategEast Westernization Index 2018 by category points. And you can look on this table and you can see one simple thing. When you look on economic Westernization, you can see that it's much higher than any other dimension that was measured by this index. The StrategEast Westernization Index 2018 shows that of the 5 sectors measured, PSNR countries are typically more successful in pursuing economic transition over other reforms, as I've said. The level of economic Westernization averaged 57% across the region. While political and cultural Westernization averaged 50%, and legal Westernization, which includes rule of law, judicial independence, and human rights protections, averaged only 42%. This suggests that economic transition can offer a strong initial point of collaboration between post-Soviet countries and the West, and eventually serve as a bridge to greater collaboration in sectors dealing with legal and political transition. Westernization Report is a new product, as a follow-up product that we've released this year, 1 month ago, and it was presented in the British Parliament on the 28th of February this year. Westernization Report 2018 track changes and identify trends. Our experts from 14 PSNR countries describe events which will most likely affect the degree of Westernization in their respective countries. Policymakers from the PSNR countries answer questions asked by our experts. Identify trends of the Westernization of post-Soviet countries. Westernization Report 2018, events and cases selected by the experts. So for Estonia, for each one of the countries, we've chosen, or our experts have chosen, the most important events which inevitably will influence the results of the next year Westernization Index, which will be released each 2 years. So in Estonia, the most important was ID card chip flow crisis. In Lithuania, it was fintech and blockchain innovations. In Latvia, it was whistleblower protection law. In Georgia, it was constitutional reform. In Moldova, cancellation of the election results for the mayor of Chisinau. Ukraine, creation of the High Anti-Corruption Court. Armenia, Velvet Revolution. Kazakhstan, alphabet Latinization. Azerbaijan, it was progress in doing business 2019 report. Kyrgyzstan, fight against corruption. Belarus, presidential IT sector liberalization decree. Uzbekistan, tax reform. Tajikistan, religious radicalism. And Turkmenistan, restriction to travel abroad. Westernization Report 2019, how the events will affect the Westernization degree. Now you can see that by green dots you have positive trend, the red ones negative, and yellow are uncertain trend. So you can see that we have a 9 out of 14 are green. We have 2 which are uncertain, which is constitutional reform in Georgia. And constitutional reform in Georgia, we mean cancellation of direct presidential elections. And instead of this, we have a president who will be elected by the parliament. And a fight against corruption in Kyrgyzstan. And some experts have a doubt if it is a real genuine struggle against corruption, or just nowadays authorities are chasing the former authorities in Kyrgyzstan. And we have 3 countries which show the negative trend, which are Moldova, cancellation of the election results for the mayor of Chisinau, Tajikistan with their religious radicalism, and Turkmenistan's restriction for youngsters or for all population to travel abroad. Westernization Report 2019 tendencies. The region as a whole is demonstrating positive, again summarizing, trends in 9 of the 14 countries studied. Events selected by our experts will undoubtedly facilitate further progression towards Western values. 2, in the majority of countries, events which had a positive effect on the degree of Westernization were indicated by the government. Now, it's important that this report was prepared by our experts, but we also had asked the authorities in those countries, and we asked them to answer our questions. So most of the countries had answered the questions, so we have 2 views. I mean, the expert view and the official view on each one of the issues. Now, about us and about our follow-up or another flagship project, contribution of StrategEast to the Westernization. This past year, StrategEast also contributed to the Westernization of the post-Soviet countries. We had the opportunity to present our position and our values to representatives of governments and civil societies and the business community at numerous conferences, panels, and personal meetings in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Latvia. The number of those presentations is in the hundreds. We made an effort to explain advantages gained by following the principles of the rule of law and protecting private property rights, including the economic benefits of following the listed principles to the participants of our Young Leadership Program. And young deputy ministers from peace in our countries who completed an internship organized by our center in the United States, together with Open World, which is Congressional Agency for International Exchange. StrategEast Westernization Award, which is important to us because it's the first year that we do it. The Westernization Award was established to recognize the contributions of politicians, business representatives, and civil activists to creating closer ties between this region and Western world. It is represented in 6 categories. 5 from our dimensions from our Westernization Index, and 6th one is for lifetime achievement. So it's economic Westernization, political Westernization, legal Westernization, Westernization of lifestyle, language and cultural Westernization, and lifetime achievement. So for economic Westernization this year, we have awarded Shavkat Mirziyoyev, President of Uzbekistan, Mr. Mirziyoyev, President of Uzbekistan, has transformed Uzbekistan by bringing equal opportunities and taking serious steps in terms of Uzbekistan economic development, liberalization of currency regulations, improvement of relations with Uzbekistan's neighbors, and generally unleashing country's economic potential. He has changed Uzbekistan's decision-making process, encouraged political competition, and strengthened civil society. In recognition of his contribution to Uzbekistan's economic development, Mr. Mirziyoyev has been awarded with Economic Westernization Award. For political westernization, we have awarded Ambassador Wolfgang Ischinger, chairman of the Munich Security Conference. Ambassador Ischinger has been awarded a Political Westernization Award for engaging the post-Soviet countries in the process of building the global security and peace during Munich Security Conference. The Munich Security Conference Core Group Meeting 2018 was held in Minsk. Ambassador Ischinger has created a constructive and open atmosphere of the conference which provided a fertile group for new approaches toward post-Soviet countries. Westernization of lifestyle was awarded Michael O'Leary, Ryanair CEO. Mr. Michael O'Leary has been awarded the Lifestyle Westernization Award in recognition of his contribution of the development of close ties between Ukraine and Europe. Ryanair flights to Ukraine are another bridge between Ukrainians and Europe, and this step has made the attendance of European countries more accessible for Ukrainians. For legal westernization, Viktor Prokopenia, technology entrepreneur and venture investor from Belarus. Mr. Prokopenia is awarded a Legal Westernization Award for his contribution to the development of the legislation in the IT area in Belarus and for creation of one of the most beneficial legal frameworks of IT business in post-Soviet countries. Now, for language and cultural westernization. Erden Kazhibek, head of the Institute of Linguistics in Kazakhstan, one of the main developers of the new Kazakh alphabet. Mr. Kazhibek has a lead at the process of transition of Kazakh language for Latin alphabet, which leads to a process of integration of Kazakhstan into global economy. And thus, he has been awarded with Cultural and Language Westernization Award. And the last one, Lifetime Achievement, is awarded to Thomas Hendrik Ilves, former president of Estonia. Mr. Ilves has developed the most digitally savvy country in the world. His belief in transformative power of technology has totally changed Estonia and rethinked the interaction between government and citizens. Nowadays, the digitization of government is an everyday reality in Estonia. Mr. Ilves has showed a very successful example of Estonia's transformation to the digital economy that reduced bureaucracy, increased transparency, and boosted economic growth. In recognition of his tremendous contribution to the creation of the digital economy of Estonia, Mr. Ilves has been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Westernization Award. Thank you, and our reports are here, and I'll be happy to answer your questions if there are any. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Thank you for your introduction. My question would it be possible for you to elaborate a little bit on the score for Ukraine as far as political, economic, and legal Westernization is concerned? How did you come to the score?
First, just a moment. Do we have the index here or only the reports? Reports? Both? So if we can just have, and I'll share the report with you and we'll look on the agenda as well. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Leo Litra. I'm representing Europe Center, think tank in Ukraine. And I've been, together with my colleagues, part of this initiative, which Mr. Motkin invited us to join. So, as he presented basically in his introductory remarks, where we have 100%, 5 blocks of criteria. Political, economic, and legal blocks have 20% each, 25 each, I'm sorry. And we have also the language and cultural, which is 15, and the lifestyle, which is 10. And each block of criteria has a range of other mini criteria, or how to put it like this. Basically, we have in each block, if we take legal Westernization, for instance, just as an example, if we take legal Westernization, then we have such criteria inside, like how many, to what extent Ukraine is being judged at the European Court for Human Rights. Do we have an independent court? Do we have, what's the ratio of convictions among the criminal cases? So there are a range of criteria. And in this context, it's not, unfortunately, I'm not the author of Ukraine case for the Westernization report and for the Westernization index. I dealt with Moldova case, but I know my colleague who worked on Ukraine on anti-corruption court. So basically, if you're interested about the index or the report, the index, yeah. So basically, we had, as I mentioned, and I believe we have the list of all questions here. Yeah, the methodology description. So basically, we had this criteria for each block, and then the expert answered to each criteria, gave his assessment or her assessment, and then we had a board of reviewers who made sure that these answers are accurate. It's basically mirroring to some extent the Bertelsmann Transformation Index, if you are familiar with this product of the Bertelsmann Foundation. The expert gives an assessment, then the reviewers check if the assessment is accurate, suggests changes if these are necessary, and basically then the result is decided by the author together with the reviewer. I don't know if I can go in some details, if you'd like me to give more detail with, or you would like me to highlight some particular moment, or which one? On Ukraine again? On Ukraine. So we calculated together all the scores which were received by Ukraine on 5 blocks on political Westernization, economic, legal, language and cultural, and Westernization of lifestyle. We sum up basically, and we have at page 12. If you have the index next to you, you can have a look at page 12. For instance, for political Westernization, we have political freedom, free and fair elections as one of the indicators in the political bloc. We have the statements and the actions of the parliamentary support for Western-based institutions. And we have also public opinions. Do public opinion in Ukraine, for instance, support Ukraine's path into the European Union, for instance? So based on this, the expert gave his assessment on Ukraine. We can also, I think, Mr. Motkin, we can also publish maybe the questionnaire with concrete scores for each of these, so it's transparent, I mean, for each of these criteria for each block. For instance, for political freedom, of course, free and fair election, of course, Ukraine didn't reach 10 out of all possible for obvious reasons. Yeah. So basically, Ukraine got 56, I think, in the Westernization index, which means it's one of the most Westernized among the countries which is not member of EU and NATO. So we have the Baltic states which have scored very high, and we have then Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. I think this score is going to change in the next index. I mean, if I can have I can suggest what's going to happen, because I've read the materials based on all states. I mean, the text and the index on all states, and the report which we have also today shows some highlights. And as Mr. Motkin mentioned, some of them are negative, some of them positive, gives us an understanding of what could happen next. And my guess is that Moldova will go down and Ukraine will replace Moldova. So Georgia is going to be first. I mean, aside from Baltic states, I mean, now first, and then it's going to be Ukraine, and then it's going to be Moldova, and then the other countries from Central Asia, which Mr. Motkin mentioned.
Still Armenia.
Armenia will also show certainly progress. Uzbekistan will show progress due to the recent reforms which happened there. So basically, we will the real added value. I mean, this index gives a very interesting insight of what interesting is happening in these countries. But even greater added value will be given by the index when we'll have the next edition, because then we could compare basically what happened in 2008, which is the baseline, which is the baseline index for us, which is the point of departure, and then 2020, when we will be able already to draw some conclusions regarding the trends of developments in these countries in each particular block and criteria. Yeah, thank you.
Inside you have
Please speak at the mic.
Yeah, sorry. In this index, you can find the grades for each micro dimension, and so beside the methodology that you have at the beginning, which is very transparent and clear, you can for each country see what is a 2.5 point and to 1.3. So you can see really how it's graded for each micro dimension, not only for the grosso. Yes, please. 2020, yeah.
Could you please comment a little bit more on the entire framework? I really don't get it, why it has to be like a Westernization, and well, wouldn't it be interesting just to have like something about the democratization processes in these countries? Why does it have to be this Westernization index?
Yeah, look, we have, it was a real challenge for us to choose the name. It could be democratization on one hand, it could be just modernization on the other hand. So we decided for us, Westernization, it's modernization based on Western values. Some people will say that it's not only Western values, it's universal values. But we basically believe that free society in post-Soviet space, which we know, now some people prefer not to call themselves post-Soviet, so we call it Eurasian and Baltic States region, or PSNR, post-Soviet non-Russia. But in this region, we think that the new society should be based on rule of law and private property protection, including the intellectual property protection. And these are necessary before only free elections are not enough. I'd not be interested to get involved in internal politics here, but in some countries, let's call it some countries, when some granny sells her voice in elections for 1 kilogram of buckwheat, we understand that there is no value for those free elections when people do not understand the meaning and importance of their voice, and they do not believe that they could influence by themselves. So we think that we should start from rule of law and private property protection, and our think and do tanks altogether. We think on practical programs that could influence the situation in post-Soviet countries. So one, for example, of our programs, the flagship program actually, is, we call it Global Minds Initiative, is an initiative that builds an IT sector in post-Soviet countries, because we believe that IT sector is able to create a critical mass of self-aware people who live in different reality from their peers who are involved in different other sectors of their economy. So they, thanks to the rules of this sector, thanks to the low flat rate of the taxes, they pay the taxes, though they don't hide, they get their salary to their bank accounts and not in the cash and the envelopes at the end of the month. So it's a long story, but the long story short, when you look on countries like Belarus, which is an authoritarian country basically, and you have 40,000 people who are involved in IT sector who generate $2 billion to the Belarusian economy, and Lukashenko has nothing to do with them because actually he became their hostage and not vice versa. You understand that you have tools today to create free zones and to expand them in each one of those authoritarian states, like Central Asia and Belarus. Now, it's a different topic for a different conversation. It's a long conversation. But we know what are the toolkit to create a different free society in those countries as one sector in each one of them. But we know how to expand this sector, and we know how to change the reality there. Yes, please.
If there are no more questions, we would like to thank our speakers for today and finish this briefing.
Thank you. Thank you.